Can you all hear me all right? Is that okay? Fucking hell, I've got to stop doing talks. I hate doing talks so much. This is basically talking two halves today. We're going to talk about everything that happened in my life up until the 1st of April 2019, and then we're going to talk about everything that happened after the 1st of April 2019. Yeah. I swear. I'm really sorry. I really like swearing. It's a sign of intelligence. If you are offended by swearing, you've really got to leave now because there's going to be a lot of swear words. Yes! I wrote this talk 3 times. So the first time I wrote it, I just sounded like a complete wanker. And then I wrote it again and I was humble and I had a little bit of humility. And this isn't Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I didn't write it the 3rd time and it was just right. I just went back to the wanky sounding talk for a very specific reason. I was uncomfortable calling myself a design leader. We're going to go into that in the future, but the rule is if you are in charge of a €1.5 million budget a year, design budget, you are a design leader. And I didn't want to do down my achievements for the fear of people in the audience thinking that I was a dickhead. So I've been on both sides of this podium and I have listened to people with like exciting job titles and I've always thought, how the fuck did you get there? And I know, having been on the other side of things, that actually what you only ever see like the edited highlights of someone's career journey. So I am Global Head of Customer Experience for Canyon Bikes, which, if you are a cyclist, is the equivalent of being Johnny fucking Ive. It is the best job in the world. I walk into work and I cannot believe that I do this job. I look at my email address and I'm like, it's a dream gig. But I didn't get here because of graft, and I didn't get here because I really worked my arse off. I got here mostly because of a few little points of luck on the way of my career. That's not to say that I'm not able to do the job. I'm very capable. I just was noticed through luck. The lighting's shit. I was going to show you my CV. I'm not going to show you my CV, but I'm going to talk you through my CV, which is more exciting than it sounds. So I've been in the design industry since 2004. I was at one point the PR for the Chippendales and for Lulu. So I did Lulu's comeback after her comeback tour. I worked for a music industry design studio for a while, and even though I was paid £50 a day and got fucking ripped over by a load of snakes, I was able to say that I worked with the Arctic Monkeys twice, which at the very start of your career, being able to name drop big time is very helpful, and that is actually a career advice for you. Name drop, use it, it's so important. Then I left and I went and I ran, I was head of marketing for a youth theatre for a while, just to contact around the corner. And it was one of those points where I had like this absolute epiphany that you can't shoehorn your children into the gaps that are left by your career. Now, I've seen lots of pregnant ladies here and I've seen lots of very clever ladies with newborn babies, and I don't want to be the harbinger of doom, but the two things don't fucking mesh. I'm sorry, full-time work and full-time parenting, there's no time left in between. So what I did at that point was I went freelance, which means I went on the dole, and I fit my career around my children. Now, I was very lucky that I was able to do that because I had my kids when I was 19 and 23, which meant that by the time I was ready to do career stuff, my kids were a little bit older. Something else sort of happened at that point in my CV is that I went to work for my boyfriend and stepped into a ready-made design agency. Now, we had this lovely symbiotic relationship where I had lots and lots of experience and I had a very little amount of time, whereas they had no experience and very little amount of money. So it all worked together really well, because what I wanted to do was to just do my shit the way that I wanted to do it, but between 9:30 and 20 to 2 every day. And that put me in quite an enviable position. So we always talk about you can't pay your wages with, what's the word? Exposure. You can't pay your wages with exposure, but actually you sort of can. And if you have to make the distinction between earning no money but being at home with your kids at a time when everyone's a little bit traumatised and getting over a very massive divorce, versus having the exposure and building your own personal brand. Go with the personal brand bit if you can. I am aware that austerity has taken away the safety net. The lovely thing about being a self-employed mom in sort of 2008, 2009 is that working families tax credits filled the gap that was left by my terrible, terrible wages. I know you don't have that now, and it's very unfair, and I'm sorry for you. However, I was able, through Well Made, to build my personal profile. About 2008, 2009, 2010, was sort of at the point where everyone just went, why are only 3% of our creative directors female? What the fuck is going on? This stuff didn't really exist then. So if you were a woman at the head of a design studio who was going, what the fuck is going on? People generally tended to listen to you. We're going to talk about the impact that had on my career later on, but anyway, it was good. So I probably earned about £750 a month. Some months were better than others, but generally around that time I was head of a studio, used to be in lots of design magazines, and some months couldn't buy the shopping. So then we sort of go on to big girl jobs. So we shut Well Made down because we were just trundling along. We couldn't think of anything better to do. We were like, can we do another 10 years of just getting by but being mates and going off and having holidays, or do we pull our fingers out and actually start working? Now my kids were older at this point. Both were in high school, maybe? I don't actually know what all my kids are. Anyway, we were in a position where I could start thinking a little bit more strategically about my career. And one of the things that I did was I went to London. So throughout the entire time of being a parent, we had a stepdad and a weekend dad, and I was the mom who did pickups and drop-offs. And then at some point I went, fuck it, I want to be the dad. I want to swoop in on Wednesday night and be like, hi kids, I've had a lovely day, let's get in the bath and I'm going to go back to work. So I was the dad. I started acting like the dad. Other people had to do school drop-offs, other people had to do school pickups, other people had to make the tea, and it gave me the headspace to focus on my career. The other thing that I did was that I moved to London. So I spent Monday to Thursday in London, and then I would fly home and everyone missed me. It was great. And then I got to leave just when things started getting parental again. And it was fucking brilliant. So that was a 6-week contract, which actually escalated and got very out of hand. And it ended up with me establishing a new department at Dare. Dare's a great agency, fucking great people, and I was allowed to build a UX content team within Dare, go off and pitch the work, and it was great. Now something else happened at that point. It was very much a case that people just sort of stopped asking to see my CV, and they stopped asking to see my portfolio. And I started getting work based on the books that I was reading, or started working opportunities because someone had seen a talk that I'd done. And it got me really thinking about the post-April 1st experience of what happens when you become so senior that your CV is irrelevant, and what happens when you become so senior that you can't have a portfolio anymore because you didn't actually do any of the work. You led the work and you strategized the work, but I didn't do any of that work. I don't build the app. So that's the point where I started thinking about big girl skills. And once you've learned everything and you know how to do the things, how do you continue to progress your career, and what's the level up that happens? So April 1st, 2019 is the day that I started at Canyon. I did an interview. I wrote my own job description. I built the department. So actually what had happened in the November of the year previous, the head of digital, a guy called John, who's a fucking genius, just messaged me on Twitter and went, oh, you like bikes and you like content strategy, do you want to come and do some work for us? And he'd found me because essentially I had a profile. So I started thinking about what are the level up skills that you have? How does your ability to write a test plan and your ability to produce scannable content and test the scannable content, how does that evolve into you as an influencer? Not that kind of influencer, but you with the power to influence, or you with the power to sort of opine, you with the ability to educate and teach, because these are leadership skills and future skills. And John found me because we both had agencies in the same area at the same time. I was vocal. He knew that I cared very, very passionately about UX content strategy, content design, whatever we're going to call it. And he paid Dare an awful lot of money for me to come in and run some tests on the new website. I flew over to Canyon, I spent some time in Germany. I was so terribly unwell at the time. What I hadn't told anyone at that period was on an incredibly high dosage of steroids and actually had psychosis, which I really kept a fucking lid on. And it was like, I was like just sweating like every 20 minutes and just like, I was having like auditory hallucinations. It was such a dark period. Anyway, got the job. So they knew that I was a thing and I had an influence and I had a personal brand. And I know that personal branding is a very, very cringy sort of idea that we're not cool with. But actually, this idea of a personal brand is what gets you through the door. The discomfort that we have with the idea of personal branding is that actually design influencers also get through that door. And it's the people who can make a lovely keynote but actually can't deliver the work. But when we think about, as design leaders, our ability to influence, it's very much a case of saying, I say that I can do this work, and at any fucking minute, you might ask me to do it, which is what happened with the with the UX test. I had to go and test a new website. I had to write the test plan, recruit the users, like find within the same demographic. I had to set up the lab. I had to synthesize the results. And then the best part was I then had to share sort of quite unfavourable results with some very senior stakeholders who had just come through an 18-month, multi-million-pound digital development project. And at that point, your ability to influence is very much how you deal with the question of, who is this fucking joker in a pink jumpsuit? So anyway, I wrote myself a job description. I set the parameters of how I would work. So I spend a week in Germany where I'm fully immersed in the business. I ride my bike, I sit in my lovely little German flat, I can work as late as I want, and then I fly home and I do mum things for a week, and it gives me balance with each. I'm not completely bogged down with being parent, so when I'm home, I'll bake some bread, but equally, when I'm in Germany, I don't have to worry about PE kit and whether or not I've locked the kids out of the house. I just thought I'd done today. So I was thinking about my ability to influence, and then also how actually we need our influence to be founded in some knowledge. The beautiful thing about UX as opposed to branding or visual design is that it is grounded in reason and research, or it should be if you're doing your job properly. Now, the really good thing about having been in the industry for 15 years is that I have got this incredible archive of research, of studies, of opinion, of everything. I just collect and collect and collect. So if someone sits to me and says, we're going to center align that text, which is my, oh, it's the hill I will die on, center align body text will just be the end of me. I can whip out an web accessibility standard guidelines and say, no, because you can't fucking read it. And the game that we play in Canyon is, do I have evidence for every crazy little bit of design that people are trying to pass through? Answer is yes. Now, if I don't have an answer, I will say, ich habe keine Ahnung. I've got no idea. But the idea is that I will go off and I will find out. When you become a senior person and when you become a leader, lots and lots of people want you to take the responsibility and bear the brunt of a decision. We have to move a button on the checkout at the moment. It might break the checkout and it might destroy conversion rate, so I am staying way back away from that one. I don't want anything to do with a decision I have to make if I haven't been present in every step, sort of from the inception of a project. And when we talk about our opinion, it's not an opinion. It is a fact-based piece of knowledge that we can whip out at any time. So I influence outside of the company and I influence inside of the company, and I have an opinion. I have a fact-based opinion that I can whip out when it is required, and I can take a step back also when I am stumped and say, I will go off and find out about this for you. But the third thing that you do when you become a design leader is that you have to start educating. You can't just keep all of these skills to yourself. There's literally no point of having worked at that point for 15 years if you are then just going to carry on doing all the grunt work yourself as well. So we had a couple of wins very early on when I joined the company, which meant that I went from who is this fucking joker in a pink jumpsuit to we need her on every project immediately. And the whole, I spend about 4 hours a day on emails going, thank you so much for your email, I'm sorry I can't be part of this project at the moment. We're getting absolutely bombarded. We're a tiny team and we have a lot of budget to grow. So if anyone wants to come to Germany, you come and talk to me at the end of it. But we are recognised, so I don't have to go in, as we do sometimes as a new UX team in a new organisation, and teach and educate. What we have to do is upskill the people in the team immediately. I didn't show screens, but like go on the website, have a little bit of a mooch around. There are big gaping holes in the website which we are working through quite quickly at the moment. And one of them is the content. You know, if you talk about your T-shaped skills, I am an ex-PR, I am a music industry producer, I am a creative copywriter, I am a branding person, I am a strategist, I am a content designer, I am a UX writer, I work in the UX of words. That is where I am most confident and most comfortable. And we know from our very sort of basic engagement metrics, we use two really, really simple metrics: scroll depth and average time on page, like cross-referenced against, you know, total read time. Dead fucking easy to see if anyone is actually reading our content. So what you have to understand about Canyon is that, you know, we've got people who are potentially spending 6, 7, 11,000 euros on a bike they have never bought. When they land on some of our pages, we talk about the freedom of road cycling and the excitement of riding, which has got fuck all to do with buying a carbon bike which costs £11,000. So we have very slowly started iterating the site to actually start talking about the impact of our frame geometry, especially on our women's bikes. We have two separate frames, one for women. It's not really for women, it's one for short people. And we've started talking about the different feel of carbon, the different feel of our group sets, what happens, why are our handlebars different across different platforms. And it's been a massive change for our copywriters who historically have been given a box and have been given a character limit and have been told to fill it with something vaguely about bikes. So we know that it doesn't work, but we have to think about, for me and my team, I look after the design team and I look after the digital team, some aspects of the digital team. I don't look after the brand team where all the copywriters live. So I can sit with my designer and say, do this again. I can also sit with my designer and allocate 20% of his time every day, every week to external learning. I can't have that same level of influence on our copywriters. So when I first stepped in, I went, this is all shit, no one's looking at it, start again. And everyone quite rightly thought I was an absolute cretin. So I've had to change the way that I educate people. And it is very, very slowly catchy monkey. I'm going to talk to you about Tom at the moment. Tom is one of our copywriters. He's from South Yorkshire, lovely guy, very, very quiet, fantastic copywriter. And over the space of the last 3 months, I've just been very, very slowly drip feeding him information about content design. So one of the first things that we did when you are trying to sort of upskill anyone in your team, don't just go, here's £1,000 training budget, go off and reskill. Because they'll just go, what in, how, why, what's wrong with me, are you going to sack me? What you need to do is get them excited. Now, the lovely thing about content design for anyone who has no idea what it is, it's like basically you change something on the site and it changes in analytics immediately. So we taught him to produce scannable content, and we just, fucking slides. Oh, the only slide I wanted to show you. We had a big, massive slide about payment procedures. Now, the disgusting thing about Canyon for writing content and producing usable UX content is that we have to do it in 13 languages and 3 non-Latin languages. So we'd gone from German, which basically, you know, even saying, you know, our discount bikes takes up your entire character limit. So we'd had to change the way that we wrote about our pricing, teach him to reduce word length, teach him to reduce syllable length, teach him to create breathing space, all that kind of business, which he got. And then we were able to show him that scroll depth had improved, and we were able to show him that actually our average time on page was beginning to, an average time on page, and the average read time was starting to come slowly together, which is what he wanted to see. So he had a quick win. And then we started talking about testing content. So what happens when we tested all the women's content? We made some prototypes, we cranked up look back, We got some women to read the prototype, and then we just interviewed them afterwards. And what we were looking for was for the women to just feed back the information that we'd given to them. So we did it in two ways. We did a combination of exam-style questions. Which bike would you ride if you were going to Mallorca? And if they said the ultimate, bang, we got it right, we knew that it was working. Versus, you know, tell us why this bike is right for you. And we were just looking for people to feed back the information. So Tom sat in on those tests as well. So we had another little like boost along the way. And then we gave Tom responsibility for all of the e-bikes content, which was fucking brilliant. And even though the e-bikes, we've invented a new category, so they're not selling a huge amount, people are reading to the bottom of the page. It's the only part of the website where we have 100% scroll depth. It's fucking brilliant. So suddenly at that point, you can sit with someone who is outside of your circle of influence and go, you've had a really nice couple of months. I've got $1,000. Do you want to go and do the Sarah Richards content design course? And it's really made me think about how we upskill within the business. I do quite like jumping on and doing a little bit of writing every now and then, but I haven't got the time. What I need to do is test and prototype and work more closely with my designers. So being able to follow that pattern of sort of, I don't know, excite, influence, you know, prove, and then let's make a fucking process out of this, then educate, then that is a situation that works, and we can pick people throughout the business and run this process over and over again. So on the 1st of October, it will be 6 months since I joined Canyon. And in that period, we have gone from nobody not really knowing what to do with us, to people being a little bit annoyed by us, to people really, really wanting us in their project and not quite understanding why they want us in their project, to us establishing ourselves as a core and helping to sort of shift the business to become a lot more design-led, which is hilarious given that we're an e-commerce company, but of 12 years like heritage, but that's where we're at. But it got me thinking about what I want from the next 6 months of my career, and then actually got me thinking about what I want for the next 6 years of my career. You know, once you've found an industry that you literally can't believe you work in, you need to sort of work out how to protect it, but also how to progress your career as well. So there are things that I am not doing right at the moment. My processes are a fucking shit show. My research repository is absolutely non-existent. I have a terrible, terrible habit of just frisbeeing decks at senior stakeholders, which contain some like quite hairy information, and then just running off going, meh, we'll talk about that later. And also within this, I'm very aware that I have an incredibly limited amount of time. So when we talk about how we lead, it's not so much about being the person who knows how to spin all the plates and knows how to like fire off all the decisions. It's almost about finding a way of like sort of like just disappearing off into the background and setting up a team of people that you are directly responsible for, but people who you are less like more tenuously responsible for, who feel empowered to go off and do the kind of work that you are championing. So I know that is a little bit cliched, and then when I was writing this like talk in the van on the way in, which isn't very Extinction Rebellion, we drive a van, but what I was thinking of was, how do I end this? What's the learning point from this? And I think for me, the learning point is very much that I'm 37 years old, I'm 38 in December, I've run a business, I've like been part of a failing business, I've had 2 kids, I've got divorced, I've had drug-induced psychosis, and there isn't a point in my life and my career when I am not shit fucking scared every single day of saying the wrong thing, or of not knowing a piece of information that I should know, or coming across as looking like I'm completely out of my depth. And that absolute fear is what sort of is like just like spurs me on to read and to learn and to speak to people and to network and to come to these talks, even though I literally feel like I want to vomit for 3 weeks afterwards, because I can see the inherent benefit of being in a room with people who really, really care about what they do and sort of like feed off all of your information as well. So I think for anyone who's early on in their career, maybe just graduated, maybe you're in your second job and you're thinking this is bobbins, I think, and then also as well, if you are on mat leave and you're thinking, I want to go off and just work in whistles for a little bit because fuck going back and fighting with stakeholders, that like 5, 10, 15 years time, you'll be really glad that you stayed in the industry, because it's the funnest industry and it's the best paid industry, and we can't just let the people stay in the industry who have the least responsibilities and sometimes the least reason to be here. So that's me. Thank you very much for listening. Are we doing questions? Walking out, lad.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
We do have time. Have you got any questions? Like, who are you?
Yeah.
Any brave souls? Anybody want to ask a quick question? Oh yes, go on.
How do you handle it if something fucks up?
Well, so I was on steroids. I was on the same amount of steroids that you give to people who have had a transplant to stop their bodies rejecting the organs. I nearly went blind at the start of this year. So it creates excess cortisone in your body. So before I was on steroids, I just used to be like, I'd go into battle and have an argument. And now that I've been on steroids and my adrenal glands, my adrenal system's a fucking shit show now. I get very, very, very shaky and very, very nervous, and I come across as being like a little bit scared. So usually what happens, if I get feedback that I'm not cool with, I will very much sit there and say, okay, cool, can we just take this offline? And I'll go and sit in the toilet and I'll have like a chat with myself. And then I'll come back and I'll be like, bang, I've got the answer. But actually that situation is probably better, because what happened previously, I would literally just go, no, and then jump on people. And I have stopped doing that, which is probably a really good thing.
Oh, well done. Music is hard because you're an adult. I was wondering if you were something cheesy, which is we've not had a snap of the audience yet, and I wondered if you'd like to join me.
Yes.
I never do things like this. So
Oh,
you're better
you're like
than
Ellen,
me.
I can't do it.
No?
I don't
okay,
take.
So we have to go this way, and the camera has to go this way. And if anybody wants to put up their hands,
Just, oh God, this is awful.
there we go. What? Well, yes, here we are. Ah, nice.
Oh.
Any more? There was another hand sort of shot up there.
Do you feel like, looking back on it, your career has always been go, 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 go?
Oh God, yeah.
Felt like you take a step back and roll back in?
Summer on the Dole. It's Summer on the Dole. That was amazing. Winter on steroids. That was hairy, but fucking hell, my house was clean. I once did Summer of Joy, so I got paid by Tesco, insane amount of money by Tesco's. Tesco's in the British Army, so with little aside, with the British Army, it was convincing the parents of Daily Star readers to send their children into army apprenticeships. My eldest son actually said, someone definitely fucking died because of what you wrote. Anyway, we had Summer of Joy. So between May and September, I spent £6,000 on days out. So yeah, we went on holiday, we went paddleboarding, we ate out twice because I was so fucking sick of juggling the kids every school holidays that I just said to Joe and Doug, who are my business partners, I'm not doing it, I can't do it again, I'm gonna have some time off. But it got to like the end of September and they were like, are you going to come back? And then it got to like the middle of October and I was a bit like, I think I finally went back to work in October and it was, I was just destitute. So yeah, I have had, I think if you work at such an intense pace, you eventually do just fall over sometimes. I'm really bad at recognising when I am about to fall over. So usually it's like medically induced and I've got to have 6 weeks off, but sometimes it'll be because the British Army have paid me to kill children.
And on that note, thank you so much, Gemma.
I'm going to get this off.
That man's better.